Welcome everybody to the City of Joliet pre-council meeting. Today is Monday, February 3rd, 2025 at 5:30 here in the council chambers. We have the Honorable Mayor Terry Darcy presiding this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we'll begin with roll call. Mayor Darcy.
Here.
Councilman Cardenas.
Here.
Councilman Clement.
Here.
Councilman Guerrero.
Here.
Councilman Hug.
Here.
Councilwoman Ibarra.
Here.
Councilman Mudron.
Here.
Councilwoman Quillman.
Here.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Here.
First,
Here.
we have a presentation. Joliet Water System Improvements for the Alternative Water Source Program, presented by Allison Swisher, Director of Public Utilities.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. So tonight I'm here along with the program team for the Alternative Water Source Program to present an update on specifically the projects that will be needed for Joliet to accept the new Lake Michigan water supply. And so I'm going to be talking about the need for those improvements. Then I'll turn over to Joe Johnson, who will talk about what those proposed improvements are and the funding sources, and then just talk about some upcoming council actions that you'll be seeing over the next few months. So our current water supply comes from 26 wells. 21 of them are deep and 5 are shallow. And as you can see, they're distributed all across the city. As you know, Joliet's over about 40 miles wide, so we have a very wide, long system to supply water to. This groundwater is treated at our 11 locations where we have our water treatment facilities. When we switch to the Lake Michigan supply, we are switching from those 11 distribution points down to 4 distribution points. And so for that reason, we have to make some significant improvements within our system for this purpose, as well as to comply with the water supply agreements that we have with the City of Chicago and the Grand Prairie Water Commission. So I will turn it over to Joe, who will walk through the specific improvements that are planned.
Thank you, Allison. Good evening, Council. Good to be back with you again tonight. As Allison said, we have our City of Joliet hats on as opposed to our Commission hats. So we're talking about improvements within the City of Joliet. Allison has laid this out. The map that's on the screen right now just gives you a general idea of the location of projects. These are a combination of storage projects, pumping projects, and some distribution or conveyance projects spread out throughout the city, as Allison said, to make sure that we can take the water that comes into these 4 new delivery points and distribute it to the other locations. This graphic also has some general dates on it to give you an idea of when the construction will begin. The first projects that we would expect to bid out would be a couple of the elevated tanks. We'll go through these individually in a few minutes, but those would go to bid this spring, go to construction, then other work begins going through later this year into 2026, 2027. So there'll be work going on at different locations over the course of the next few years. The total program budget for the Joliet projects has not changed since the last update of the last rate study was done for the city, so we're carrying $192 million in total estimated costs for the program budget for the Joliet-only improvements. So I'm going to walk through, we've broken these projects up into several what we call work packages. You can think of them as each being a separate construction contract that will be bid out and awarded to a contractor. 0801 is actually some SCADA system upgrades. Decision was made last year actually to combine this with other work that the city was putting out to bid at that time. So this particular contract is already underway. This is basically upgrades to the computer system that the city uses to control the water distribution system. So that work is already proceeding, was actually funded outside of the program through the city's routine CIP program. So really no action will be required on that front. Work package 0802 is 2 1 million gallon elevated water storage tanks that will be constructed over the course of the program within the city. One near Black Road and Bronx Road that will serve areas primarily west of I-55, and then the second down near Compass Boulevard and Route 53 that will serve some of the areas in the southern part of the system. And again, these storage facilities meet a couple of requirements. One, under the water supply agreement, Joliet is required to have 2 times its average day of water demand in storage as reserve, so they help to meet that. And then the elevated tanks also provide for consistent pressure and for fire flow capacity in areas of the system that are away from the points of connection. So this is the first work package that will be bid out, and we'll talk about the specific timeline, but the construction period for these begins later this spring and will run through April of 2027. 0803 is pumping station and some miscellaneous improvements. Again, these are projects that are required to help maintain pressure throughout the system at points away from these delivery points. There'll be a pumping station constructed adjacent to the city's Ridge Road standpipe. Excuse me, that's an existing standpipe near Plainfield South High School. The pumping station will allow us to pump water out to areas and maintain pressure there. There'll be improvements made to the Ingalls Avenue pump station and a new pressure adjusting facility, which will be a small structure near on south of Jefferson Street on Bluff Street. These projects would start in February of 2026 and run through May of 28. 0804 are the distribution or conveyance improvements. These are pipeline projects. These generally are transmission main projects required, again, to move water from the 4 delivery points to locations in the system where it's needed. This work has been coordinated with the water main replacement program. So in some cases, we are able to consolidate projects. This includes some improvements at the Plainfield School District and Plainfield Park District site near Ridge Road and Caton Farm Road, and then some other improvements from Midland Avenue and Morgan Street to Bluff Street and Marion Street. So again, spread out throughout town. These are generally a little bit larger than the water main replacement projects, up to 24 inches in diameter. Again, these are intended to go into construction second quarter of 2026, run through 2028. 0805 is some additional storage tanks at several sites in the city. The 0802 I talked about before was specifically elevated storage tanks that, if you like to think of, look like a golf ball sitting on a tee, that type of facility. These storage tanks are a combination of a ground tank and a couple of standpipes that are, as the picture shows here, more like a straight cylinder. The ground tank would be out at Black Road and County Line Road in the far western part of the system, and that will be combined with a pumping station that's part of the next package we'll talk about. And then 2 standpipes at Stryker Avenue and McDonough, which is the primary point where water from the commission will come into the city of Joliet. And then another standpipe at the city's public utilities facility on Washington Street. So those tanks, again, would go into construction second quarter of 2026 through 2028. 0806 is some companion pump stations that go with the storage facilities. There's a pump station at Black Road and County Line Road that would accompany the storage site there, and a pumping station at Stryker Avenue and McDonough that goes with the standpipes at that primary receiving point. That work is a little bit further out. The tanks go in first, the pump stations then follow. So that construction would start in 2027. Sorry. 0807 is some additional pumping station rehab. So these are existing, one existing facility at Essington Road that would be modified to better distribute water out into the system at that location, and then a new pumping station at the Washington Street at the city's existing public utilities site that would again be paired with that storage facility to serve that part of town. These are towards the end of the program, November 28 through December 2029. And then the last two, 0808, as we complete the program, some of the city's existing well and water treatment facilities will no longer be needed. So there will be some facilities that we will maintain as an emergency backup, but in other cases, there'll be sites that can be either repurposed or demolished. So 0808 will be a project that actually wouldn't even be implemented until after the commission water is coming to Joliet and we started things up, but it would involve then repurposing and demolition of some of those facilities that are no longer needed at the end of the program. And then the last Joliet-only work package is a new water and sewer garage. The city's existing water and sewer garage at East Washington Street is in poor condition. It really doesn't provide for efficient operations anymore. As I mentioned before, there's some work that's going to be going on at that site to put up a new water tank and a pumping station. Looking at the overall scheme of things, it made sense at this time to construct a new utilities garage for water and sewer services. The city went through an evaluation of sites, A site was acquired along Meadow Avenue south of I-80 down near the river. So that site the design is now proceeding there. That facility will provide garage, equipment storage, training, and administration space so that the administration, training, and operations for water and sewer can be centralized there. It's a total of, I believe, about 52,000 square feet. It's the size of the facility. Includes a large garage for the vehicles, mezzanine area for some storage and meter equipment, and then administration space there. That project is planned to go into construction in the summer of 2026. So I ran through a lot of those work packages. There's a significant amount of work to go on in Joliet. For 2025, there are 2 work packages that we would expect to advertise for bids. So 0802 is the 2 elevated tanks. That's currently scheduled to advertise later this month, so that design is complete. Final permitting is in process. So those will be advertised in February 2025. We'll get the bids, review them. We would expect to come back to the council with a recommendation for award of a contract in May of 2025. And then later this year in October, we'll be advertising for bid for 0803, which is some of the initial booster pump station work, upgrades, and the Morgan Street pressure reducing facility. So that would go out to bid in October. We'd expect to bring that to the council for approval of a contract in February of 2026. As has been our model from the very beginning of the program, we're working to utilize a range of funding sources. So the city has an existing WIFIA loan that covers the development costs, the design, the land acquisition for both alternative water source program and Joliet expenses. We're currently in the process of working to close a WIFIA loan for the construction portion of this work, the Joliet only work. That current loan application is for up to $86 million, or 49% of the anticipated cost of these projects. The interest rate that's assumed in the financial model right now is about 4.25%. We're closely monitoring interest rates right now. As I'm sure you're all aware, there are a lot of things going on in the financial world. Our intention is to make sure that as these projects come up, we're trying to leverage the best source for the city, whether that be WIFIA loans, whether it be state revolving fund loans, or revenue bonds if that's essential. So WIFIA is a key component. We have an approved project plan for the first 3 work packages with the Illinois EPA. It means that those projects are on the list and available to be considered for potential IEPA funding. The city is using a lot of IEPA revolving loan funding for its water main replacement program right now, and IEPA is careful about how much money, how much funding they allocate to one given entity. So we have to do a bit of a balancing act there to see what's there. But we are in a position, as I say, we've got 1 approved project plan, we've got a 2nd project plan that should go in here shortly, and the intention is to position as much as $125 million worth of the work for potential SRF funding. So we have that availability. Whether we use it or not will again depend on timing, what IEPA will make available to us, and interest rates. And then lastly, revenue bonds would be used if needed to cover the balance of the improvements. With that, I'm going to let Allison go through kind of the next action.
Yes, thank you, Joe. So as Joe had kind of mentioned, some of the upcoming council items on tomorrow night's council agenda, we have some of the real estate associated with this program, which is approving the land donation for that southeast elevated water storage tank. Up in March 4th, we're anticipating that we would bring forward the WIFIA Loan 3 and the supplemental indenture that's required for that borrowing of the federal low-interest loan program. And then on May 6th, awarding the construction contract for the 2 elevated water tanks. So that's just a reminder of all the work we're going to be doing within Joliet now that it's getting closer to when the residents will start seeing some of this construction. Just wanted to bring that forward to the council. If there's any questions, I can answer them now.
Mayor?
Allison, for you or your team, can you give us a brief update on what's happening in Chicago and where we're at?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have, in 2023, the council approved the water supply agreement with the city of Chicago, and within that, there was always intended that that would be transferred to the Grand Prairie Water Commission. So we just recently gave notice to Chicago that we would like to assign the agreement to the Grand Prairie Water Commission, and that triggered a 90-day period by which we would, have ongoing discussions to do that transfer. So that assignment is anticipated that would be coming in April for the city council's approval to assign that water supply agreement. Other work with Chicago, we have a lot of good coordination with them on the technical side. We'll be breaking ground on the first construction project in Chicago later this spring, and doing a lot of outreach with the neighborhood in Chicago at the Durkin Park area to educate them about the project. The team's been doing a lot of work with the contractor, Michaels, for that first contract. So everything's moving ahead as far as the coordination with Chicago.
Thank you.
Question, it was mentioned during the previous presentation that the IEPA revolving fund financing, which is obviously the lowest cost of the options, that they try to, have a cap, if you will, so any of the IEPA loans that are now part of the commission or transfer to the commission, that won't be held against Joliet in that consideration, will it?
Yeah, that's correct. I was down in Springfield last week and met with the director of the state revolving fund, and the good news is that the state is actually going to be issuing bonds to increase the funding within the SRF. So this past year, there was a $35 million cap, of which Joliet received $35 million. And so they do anticipate that cap would increase in future years because of this increased revenue they'll get from the sale of the bonds. And I did make clear to them, it was a discussion point that the commission is a separate entity and would therefore, have its own allotment, and, Joliet would not be, capped with, in combination with the commission. So each, if the cap was 50 million, we would each be eligible to receive up to
And they
50
agreed
million.
with that perspective?
Yes, but they do a ranking of the projects, based on various components, and they did say that ours were ranking very high, so.
Thank you.
I have a question. The water tower, the donation of land, that
Yes.
was in the original annexation agreement, wasn't it?
Yes, so the original annexation agreement with Compass Business Park included up to 20 acres of land to be donated for water and wastewater purposes, and also specifically called out any necessary easements for the city's alternative water source program. So the land is about 1.3 acres, and so the city still has, over 18 acres then of land that if we needed for use for the water and wastewater purposes in that development.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor? Yeah. Allison, I don't know if this is for you or for Joe. Joe mentioned something about the Stryker Avenue tank having two standpipes inside of one container or one tank, correct? Or is there
It'd be two separate, so there'd be two of the cylinders.
There'd be two cylinders there at that location. And with the fire station, Joliet West storage facility there, I missed it. Are we keeping all those, or some of those going down, or what was that story?
All of the city's existing storage, like the water tower at Joliet West, will be remaining. So this additional storage is being used to assist with the pumping that needs to be done, as well as to add to that 2 times storage requirement that we have with our Grand Prairie Water Commission and Chicago water supply agreements.
So I think the answer just for Larry, so the commission, I understand, but the other partners, do they have their funding in line?
Yes, so each community, we've been trying to coordinate this amongst the group so that everyone isn't going the same year and asking for money. Each community has similar improvements that they need to do within their town also, adding storage, adding pumping. And so they are also want to use, SRF funding for their own projects. But for example, like Shorewood this year has received SRF funding for their delivery structure and storage facility. And so again, we're trying to work with other communities to try and stagger when those projects are happening so that we're not competing with each other for the funds.
and competing with others for the contractors? Do we have enough contractors?
Yes, that is also a component of that. We, definitely elevated tanks and standpipes. There are only a few contractors who do that work. And so that was another point of the exercise of trying to stagger that construction so we would not be competing with the contractors.
Thank you.
Allison, just a quick question. I know that our allocation of water is going to take us out to 2050, and I believe our number was 400,000 residents we could grow to.
That number was our ultimate build-out. So
Okay.
right now, the system is being designed for the city's 2050 population. And so then to grow beyond that 2050 estimate, there would need to be additional infrastructure that would need to be designed and constructed to go beyond that.
So to 2050, what's the number we're looking at to grow out to?
Does anyone at the top of your head remember that number?
388,000 person number, but I'm not sure what year. We can get that.
Okay, I just know there's a number we're going to grow to, and this takes us out long range without any more investment till we grow beyond that number.
Yeah, I will have to get the number. I mean, I think for the 2050, it was, I think, maybe 208,000 that pops in my head for the 2050. So,
Okay.
but we'll verify that number. The 400,000 number was for 100 years from now when the city's at ultimate build out.
Well, we stay in good shape, we'll be here for that moment.
Mayor, one more
Yes,
question.
Mayor.
You made me think of a question there. One more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what's roughly at 2050, what percentage of our allotment will be in use?
So, okay, Teresa, do you have the numbers off the top of your head of so how in MGD, what the city has in 2050?
It's about 2930 MGD. That's the max day declared demand for City of Joliet for 2050. And so what will happen is, as you get to that 2050 number, and same with all the other member communities, there would be expansion in the Grand Prairie Water Commission system in order to increase above that 2050 maximum day demand.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Bless you.
All right. Next is citizens to be heard on agenda items. Is there anyone who would like to speak under citizens to be heard on agenda items?
Hey, while we are on the subject of water here, I want to bring up about, all the developments, all the warehouse developments, and that, every time something is built, they have to build these retention ponds. They have to dig these deep retention ponds. And those, if you all don't know, but they end up tapping into the underground water springs that are natural water that's in the ground. These retention ponds go so deep, they tap into that. That fills the retention ponds up with all that natural underground spring water. And then, the retention ponds are pumped out. The water is pumped out to the ditches, and then when it goes to the ditches, it ends up going to the creeks. And from the creeks then up run into the rivers. And then next thing you know, they're going to the major rivers and that, and they go out to the oceans. And the water is forever lost. I know when Center Point was built, living in the Center Point area all my life, almost all my life, I knew when the ditches were. I used to mow the ditches. Used to get right down, mow the ditches, no problem. Then Center Point came, dug these deep ditches. We couldn't, when they built that thing, they opened it up, the ditches became rivers. You couldn't even go mow. You couldn't even get near the ditch, or else you'd be swept away by the current of how fast the water was going. And that's from the pumping out all the retention ponds. And same thing with the DHL Mars Candy Warehouse and that. I drive around the area and I've been looking at these retention ponds. They are way down because the fact all that water has just been pumped out and lost, and which has led to the water shortages. You know, not just Joliet, but all Will County is just becoming nothing but a warehouse county. And we need to stop this. You know, why are you encouraging and wanting more development to come in that's gonna use more water? And how much water these warehouses use? You know, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water every day they use. You know, you got all these employees. You can't tell me the employees don't use the toilet when when they work all day, you know? You don't tell me that these employees don't go to the bathroom. Every time an employee flushes the toilet, how many gallons of water are lost there too? And it's, you know, it just gets me that, you know, we're talking about water shortage, but then you guys keep talking about bringing in more development. Like, let's continue to add to the water shortage by keep adding more warehouses. I think you all need to understand that, and when I talk to Ellison about that and I tell her about it, she says I'm absolutely right on it. So I'm so right on it, you know, take the grounds and stop, you know, stop letting the cities and not just in Joliet, but all Will County, we gotta stop pushing for all these warehouses and all this development, because all it's doing is depleting our water supply, and now we gotta get water from Chicago, which of course, everybody's gonna end up paying more for their water.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak under citizens to be heard on agenda items? Okay, seeing none. Next, we will have the city manager review tomorrow night's actionable items.
We will hear from the Land Use and Economic Development, Public Safety, and Public Service Committees tomorrow, starting with the consent agenda, approval of minutes, invoices to be paid, Council Memo 8325, award of contract for the 2025 drinking water sodium hypochlorite purchase to Univar Solutions USA LLC in the amount of $467,325. Council Memo 84-25, award of contract for the 2025 sanitary service lateral lining program to Performance Pipeline, Inc. in the amount of $695,522.66. An award of the 2025 sanitary service lateral professional agreement to RJN Group in the amount of $94,600. Council Memo 8525, award of 2025 Public Utilities Department Plumbing Maintenance Services contract to Poner, Dillman, and Mahalik, Inc., PDM, in the amount of $340,222. Council Memo 8625, purchase of a Leica robotic total station from Cara Company, Inc., in the amount of $41,769.08. This is a piece of equipment that we use for surveying that was included in our budget. Council Memo 8725, Amendment Number 1 for the Phase 2 engineering services for the Farrell Road over Spring Creek Improvement Project to Hutchinson Engineering in the amount of $26,190. Council Memo 8825, approve the expenditure to ThriveWorks Community Mental Health Program in the amount of $240,000.
Mayor? I can't say enough positive about this program. This has been a godsend to a lot of Joliet and Joliet area folks since it was brought on by Chief Carey and his team. Chief, can you give us, not now, but you know, it's at a later date, can you give us an update exactly what we've accomplished since we brought this on several years ago?
Yes.
Because I think you should brag a little bit. This is a wonderful program for the community.
Yeah, I can give you a quick presentation at a future meeting if you'd like.
Perfect. Thank you. Is that okay, Mayor?
That'd be great.
Tomorrow?
Yes, no, not tomorrow.
I'm kidding.
You know, and I know originally when this came out, the original budget was 400,000, so you're really not using all the cash resources. And I think they're doing a phenomenal job. I'm glad that council brought this forward years ago. Thank you.
Council Memo 8925, approve payment to Julie, Illinois One Call System Services to Julie, Inc. in the amount of $26,904.25. Council Memo 90-25, approval of engagement with Hanks Consulting, LLC and Holstein Development Corporation for services associated with modifying HAP contracts and rental rates at Riverwalk Homes.
Mayor, I would make a request that 9025 be separated out tomorrow, if that's okay, Clerk? Miss Clerk? Mrs. Clerk? Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, just making a note there to make sure we do that.
Thank you.
Agenda item, Council Memo 9225, award of a contract for the Gamesey Park Sanitary Sewer Rehabilitation Program to Hair Construction, Inc. in the amount of $3,221,383. And amendment number 1 to the 2025 Sanitary Sewer Rehabilitation Professional Services Agreement with RJN Group for an amount not to exceed $263,600. Council Memo 9325, award a professional services agreement for construction-related engineering services for the 2025 water main and lead water service line replacement programs to Burns and McDonnell Engineering Company in the amount of $4,584,963.79. Moving on to ordinances. Council Memo 9525, ordinance amending the 2024 annual budget for the combined sewer overflow long-term control plan Phase 4 East Side and West Side combined sewer overflow regulators project to deconstruction in the amount of $2,400,000 and approve payment of pay request number 6 in the amount of $2,663,549.96. That's the only ordinance. Moving on to resolutions. Council Memo 9725, resolution approving acceptance of donation of land for water tower site and authorizing approval and execution of an easement agreement with TCIH Holdings LLC, which is North Point, for the alternative water source program. That was just what Allison was talking about, and that questions being answered that this is a water tower needed for city needs as part of that annexation agreement. Just so the public is aware, this is North Point, but they are donating land to us to build a water tower that we need for our build out here in Joliet. The North Point will have to do, their own water system upgrades when they expand to east of 53. Council Memo 9825, resolution authorizing the acquisition of property for the Joliet downtown levee improvements in the amount of $115,000. Council Memo 9925, resolution appropriating supplemental motor fuel tax funds for amendment number 1 to the Phase 2 engineering services for the Farrell Road over Spring Creek improvement project. And that concludes all the agenda items for tomorrow.
Okay. Next is public comments. Is there anyone who would like to address the council this evening? Okay, seeing none. There is no request for closed session this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Did I hear you right?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.